Welcome to our latest Wandering Walks of Wonder Museum tour. Today we're headed to the small town of Marshall, Missouri for a tour of the Nicholas-Beazley Aviation Museum. Marshall has a rich history in aviation innovation, notably as the birthplace of the Nicholas-Beazley Airplane Company in 1921. Founded by Russell Nichols and Howard Beazley, pioneers in flight technology, the company initially focused on selling airplane propellers and parts before expanding into aircraft production. Their legacy includes supplying parts for the iconic Spirit of St. Louis, famed for Charles Lindbergh's historic solo transatlantic flight. At its peak, Nicholas-Beazley boasted the world's largest civilian flying school, educating over 3,000 students. As we tour the museum today, we'll learn about the history of the Nicholas-Beazley Aviation Company, and this museum preserves that heritage with exhibits that showcase historic planes and artifacts. Highlights along the tour that we'll see are the groundbreaking Barling NB-3, renowned for its record-breaking performance in altitude, speed, and fuel efficiency. Another marvel that we'll see is the NB-8, notable for its innovative, lightweight, and foldable wing design, which allowed it to be towed by road. Despite succumbing to economic pressures during the Great Depression, the Nicholas-Beazley Airplane Company remains a pivotal chapter in the chronicles of aviation history. Hopefully you'll learn a little bit more about this company and what it means to this small town of Marshall, Missouri.
It was the stuff dreams are made of. And one person who followed his dream to Marshall was Leo Faribaugh of Pennsylvania.
My dad talked about Marshall, Missouri a lot. Never had a hard thing about Marshall, Missouri. Always had a good time out there. He was out here at least 3 times. The first time to learn how to fly, the second time to buy an airplane and take home, and then the last time he had to bring it back to refix it. He wrecked it. He dreamt about building an airplane and stuff like that, and it was all, he saved everything. His letters, when his family at home would send him letters, he sent back. And mind you now, this was the early, late 20s, when airplanes, thinking about airplanes was crazy, especially back up there in Pennsylvania, up in the mountains.
And then when we came out here and we met Larry over there and came into this place and we saw the things that Pap was talking about, and then we left some of his belongings here. It was like when we got in the car, Mars, it was like we left his spirit here, you know. We just left him where he really, really wanted to be. And that's the way it should be.
The thing that amazed me the most was how he educated himself. He only went to school to the 6th grade, and he would always read, and I thought, this is so remarkable. This man went to Marshall, Missouri by himself when he was only in his early 20s. He wasn't afraid to leave home, a small town boy from Cambria County, and his desire to fly was so great that nothing was going to stop him.
He wanted to fly, and no matter what cost, he was going to fly. And he was going to live his dream. And as it went, you know, one passion became another passion, but he was set. He didn't let money stop him. He didn't let fear stop him. And fear and money these days control everybody's lives, it seems. And it's just so impressive to hear that there's somebody, there was, I'm related to somebody that had literally no fear. I mean, even for me to go out right now to just leave and pick up and go, and I'm 25, it would be kind of scary. For him, it was, not a real big, it was a pretty big issue, but he still had the courage to go do it.
Nicholas-Beazley Barling MB-3 was an unusual light monoplane that was born of many revolutionary ideas. The fact that it could carry 3 people with good performance on 60 horsepower was well worthy of some applause in itself. The unusual MB-3 incorporated many new principles in its construction, and its overall design was a refreshing approach to the never-ending problem of marketing a useful light airplane for personal use, one that would be both economical and efficient in its service. That the MB-3 delivered a performance far beyond the average with this amount of horsepower is very well proven by its record. In 1923, the National Air Races were held in St. Louis, Missouri. Russell Nicholas and Howard Beazley were in attendance and met Walter H. Barling, the English aeronautical engineer who had designed the largest airplane up until that time, the Barling bomber. Barling shared information about the revolutionary wing he was trying to perfect. In 1927, a contract was signed between Barling and the Nicholas-Beazley Airplane Company to produce the Barling NB-3, a new day airplane. The fuselage framework was built up of welded chrome moly steel tubing and streamlined to shape with aluminum alloy fairing structures that faired the fuselage into the wing attach junction and also formed the cockpit cowling and the turtleback section. The completed framework was fabric covered. The fuel tank was mounted high in the fuselage just ahead of the front cockpit and was actually shaped to form the cockpit cowling as it fared back from the engine. The all-metal wing framework was built up of box-type spar beams that were formed from stamped-out view sections of aluminum alloy sheet that were riveted together into beams. The wing ribs were riveted together of aluminum alloy sheet stampings. The leading edge of the wing was covered with aluminum alloy sheet to preserve the airfoil form, and the completed framework was fabric covered. The wing was fully cantilevered and had no external braces or struts. The center section was flat, but the wingtips had 5 degrees of dihedral angle for stability in flight. It took a year to produce the first airplane and prepare for its initial flight due to the 1926 Air Commerce Act. The radical design utilizing duralumin required special tubing, dies, and scales in its production. P.O. Gibson, foreman of the production division of Nicholas-Beazley, created a special die to shape the metal, and a double-action press was purchased, capable of corrugating enough pieces for 100 airplanes a day. The production line which Gibson set up was similar to automobile assembly lines in use today. The ultimate goal was to be able to produce 40 airplanes per week after all the machinery was in place, with the starting goal of 1 airplane per day. Weighing less than 700 pounds, the New Day plane offered less weight, greater load carrying capacity, higher rate of climb, greater stability, and faster speed than any 3-place ship of equal power. Powered with the 5-cylinder Le Bon 60 engine of 60 horsepower maximum, the MB-3 delivered an outstanding performance in this combination, and its flight characteristics were best described as obedient and gentle. Being of good aerodynamic proportion and inherently stable, it was gentle in the stall and described as spin-proof. But it would have been much better to say that it would spin, but with almost instant recovery. Short field performance of the MB-3 with gross load was excellent, and one could say that it's a good example of the ideal airplane for the average private owner. Another useful feature was the ability to procure prefabricated section of the wing to replace damaged areas. The fabric-covered tail roof was built up of welded chrome moly steel tubing. The vertical fin and the horizontal spin visor were ground adjustable for engine torque and variations in weight. The split axle landing gear of 57-inch tread was built up of welded chrome moly steel tubing in streamlined section and used rubber shock cord to absorb the bumps. In an MD-3 modified with extra fuel tanks, Dwight Samuel Barney Zimmerly set a non-stop distance record of 1,650 miles from Brownsville, Texas to Winnipeg, Canada in 16 hours. He also established an altitude record of nearly 28,000 feet in February 1929. Over 100 MD-3 airplanes were eventually built and sold before the Depression of 1929 made airplanes such a luxury that production was halted. The Nicholas-Beazley MD-3 in our museum is serial number 26. Originally built for Popular Mechanics magazine, the aircraft was wrecked when it was delivered, so it was hauled back to Marshall and purchased by 3 employees of the company, who included Bob Garnett, Bill Brain, and Archie Laws. They fixed it to fly, and Mr. Brain used it to fly from Little Rock, Arkansas to Marshall, Missouri to serve the National Guard. Eventually, it was acquired by Dick Geist of Oklahoma, who worked on its restoration for almost 50 years. When he died in 2002, a small group of dedicated volunteers quickly raised $60,000 to bring it back to Marshall. But it was indicated that he was only example of the best part. He alive the story of Marshall, where the side of the world
On another occasion, later in the war, we had long missions to Prague, Czechoslovakia, and that's like somewhere way south of the land. It's a long, long way from the British Isles. We went there specifically for the purpose of shooting up air base that had gas pipes. Now we're flying top airplane. Of course, our speed on that is like 400 miles an hour, but this, jet fighters run 500 or 600 miles an hour. But they could do basic damage to the bombs if they got in the air. So the purpose of that was to take that out. And we went over there and destroyed a number of those. And as I was flying in the area, I heard the word on the radio, break. That's a signal for you to flight formation. You don't ask questions, you don't do anything, you automatically respond. And when I responded, I was flying towards level, and I flipped it over one side and pulled a tight left turn, and looked behind me, and sure enough, there was one of those jet fighters back there, working his cannons, coming right up my tail. And of course, had I not responded, of course, he would hit me and shot down. But in the meantime, since I saw him in time, I was going to turn tight and roll over like this, and then come back from underneath as he went across. And then I was going to shoot him, so I was going to be on his tail. Well, I was on the tail line, but when all that happened, it only took about 3 seconds. He was clear down and clear out of there. So there was nothing she could do for it. That's how fast they were compared to the prop planes we would fly.